In 1928, in the territory of modern Pakistan, archaeologists discovered this soapstone seal. It is about 4,000 years old, and according to many Indologists, it depicts Shiva meditating in Bhadrasana. Apparently, this is the most ancient evidence of the yoga practice. These are Vedas, the oldest Indian scriptures containing hymns, mantras, prayers. They are still used during worship services. For hundreds of years, they were passed from mouth to mouth before they were embodied in voluminous books written in Sanskrit. Thus, in the 10th mandala of the very first of the 4 Vedas, the Rig Veda, there is case in hymn, where the estranged long-haired ascetics dressed in dust, wandering around the world and being friends with the gods, are sung. They are the very first yogis. The philosophical ideas of Hinduism, born of the Vedas, are actively developed in the Upanishads. There are 108 canonical Upanishads in total, and the 13 oldest and most authoritative of them are called the principal Upanishads. The very word yoga is first encountered in Katha Upanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad. In Shvetashvatara Upanishad, the benefits of yoga are listed, and even recommendations for choosing a place for practice are given. In the 2nd chapter of Katha Upanishad, a chariot metaphor describing the interaction of the senses, body, mind, intellect, and soul of a single person is set forth. In the 6th chapter of the Maitreya Upanishad, it is about the 5 limbs that will later form the basis of the classical yoga of Patanjali. In Mandukya Upanishad, one of the most important themes is the sacral sound Among the late principal Upanishads, there is a group of purely yogic texts. There, yoga is divided into 4 types. Mantra yoga is the chanting of mantras. Laya is the yoga of consciousness dissolution. Hatha is focused on physical practices, and Raja yoga is the sum of all types of yoga, its highest form and goal. For the first time, some asanas with specific instructions for their implementation are mentioned. Most of them are sedentary meditative poses. However, lion pose, peacock pose, and headstand are already among them. In addition, in the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad, the mystical physiology of man is considered in the most detailed way. In general, these Upanishads are already rather practical textbooks that have opened yoga to ordinary people. The great Bhagavad-Gita begins with expectation of the battle. 2 armies, ready to begin fighting, stand facing each other and are waiting for a signal. The leader of the Pandavas, Arjuna, seeing in the ranks of his enemies a lot of his relatives and friends, is in despair. He turns to his friend and charioteer, Krishna, for advice. Krishna explains that our body is only a temporary place for the soul, Atman, which is authentic, eternal, and unchanging. Anxiety of the mind, passion, and desire create a maya, shell illusion hiding the soul and tying the person to the material. His individuality under the shell determines gunas, 3 fundamental properties of nature. Nature, or prakriti, is the material origin of this world and consists of 24 elements. The spiritual component is purusha, the realm of spirit, life force, and source of consciousness. Together, they are Brahman, which on an individual level is realized as the Atman, that is, the soul. The cognition of the unity of Brahman and Atman is the main goal of man. But how can this be achieved, asks Arjuna. That's what yoga is for, answers Krishna. It is divided into 3 types. Karma yoga is the yoga of action without attachment to results, when every work is a sacrifice to the supreme good. Jnana yoga is the yoga of spiritual knowledge and self-knowledge, the search for truth. Bhakti yoga is a devotional service to God with the understanding that God is everything and ultimately reunion with the God. At the end of Gita, Krishna once again invites Arjuna to realize his duty and accept the battle. Especially if it is a battle with yourself. Somewhere at the turn of the millennia, the sage Patanjali took the best of that from yoga and combined it with a Samkhya philosophy. It resulted in 196 aphorisms, which later became the main yogic text. In the first chapter, Patanjali gives the definition. The restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga. Then, the inner observer abides in its own form. Elsewise, it is identified with these modifications. The restraint is achieved with two approaches: control of emotional states and disengagement therefrom. The result is a state of comprehension, which is accompanied by emergence of opinion, analysis, delight, and experience of one's I-ness. One must struggle with mental disturbances arising in the process with one-pointedness practice. The intermediate result of successful yoga practice is a state of unity with the object of meditation. Herewith, the object can be gross or subtle, and its cognition discursive or reflexive. These four types are called samadhi with a seed, and the next step is samadhi without a seed, that is, object-free. The second chapter begins with a more practical Kriya Yoga. Then, Patanjali explains the essence of kleshas, emotional attachments coloring the modifications of the mind stuff, their connection with the person's karma, and the inevitability of transforming karma into suffering. Further, he describes the cause of suffering and the possibility of getting free of it through yoga, and considers its 5 external means. At the beginning of the third chapter, the internal means of yoga are given. Together, they form the most important part of the practice, called samyama, which opens the way to internal transformations of the practitioner. In addition, most of the sutras of this chapter are devoted to the diverse psychic forces that samyama practice gives. The fourth chapter classifies the sources of the psychic forces of the yogi, explains the concept of the karma cycle, and deepens into the philosophical problems of yoga, namely the theory of cognition. Yoga Sutras concludes with the description of the state of the cloud of Dharma and final liberation. The philosophical depth and brevity of Yoga Sutras inspired many thinkers to comment on and create their own interpretations that have become the sources of a huge number of diverse yoga branches and schools. But that will be a story of current era.